Hello and welcome to week 5 of Foundation 612 Educational Research at Old Dominion University. And this week we're going to talk about human subjects, the review process that we use with human subjects. So first of all, what really is a human subject? It's when you do any type of research or investigation that you obtain data that is related to a human being or personally identifiable information. So this is an important definition to know. When we do human subjects research, we know that it has a lot of implications. It's very valuable research, but we have certain ethical and regulatory responsibilities we have to take into consideration. First of all, we need to make sure that those people we are investigating, it is in their best interest and we're protecting their welfare. And then we have to make sure that when we do our research or our data collection, we design that study to make sure that the risk is minimal. And then we need to make sure that we have adequate training so that we can protect the rights and welfare of our subject that we're researching. That's why here at ODU, we have an institutional research board and we take training through CITI, which y'all have been working on. Some of you have already done it. So to go back to what we talked about a little bit in the very first week, you remember topics 10 and 11 in the text talked about certain things that you have to do for human subjects. And we talked about this came out of things that people had done in the past, whether maliciously or not, which some of these were a little malicious. They did not take into account the welfare and the well-being of their subjects. So we talked some about the Nuremberg Code, if you remember, and the Tuskegee syphilis study that happened many years ago. And so out of those is how we came up with what we call now the Institutional Research Board. And so we have these ethical principles that we talked about, if you remember, in the very first week. You have the principle of beneficence, which means that you should strive to do no harm to your subject. Also, we have another part of ethics called justice, which means that we are going to treat everyone equitably, and we're not going to have any burden or benefits for the research that benefits some other people but burdens other people. Everybody is treated fairly with justice. Autonomy means that all individuals are free to make a choice, and they're free to participate or they're free not to participate. You can't be forced to participate. They also have informed consent, which lets them know they are participating, and they're also welcome to stop their participation at any time that they feel is appropriate for them. And then they have the right to privacy. So, the laws that we currently deal with, every time you go to the doctor, the HIPAA laws and all these kind of laws. If you work in education, you have FERPA laws. But we have a lot of laws that try to protect an individual's right to privacy so that these people who are going to be part of your subject research need to have some sense of feeling that their name, their personally identifiable information will be kept private so that you can do your research without putting them in any type of jeopardy. So I said at ODU we use the CITI, and we have the Institutional Review Board. There's a whole page on the ODU webpage called the IRB Net, and this takes you to the training that they have for IRB. All of IRB now is done through this network instead of by paper. This link right here will take you to a website that this is the actual website for the IRB Net. And if you go down the page, you will see that they have the dates that the IRB committee meets. But the really important things right here is they have some online training that tells you how to go through the submission process. And they have also training for committee members, which we don't need to worry about that. So they have resources on that page. They have the video and training, like I said, and here's a direct link to the training if you want to go through it. It's probably a good idea. Back in the dark ages when I did mine, everything was done on paper, so we had to, try to fill out the paper as best you could and turn it in, and everything was manual. Let's talk a little bit about the different levels of IRB review. You see there are 3 categories. Exempt is the one that is the lowest, and it has the least risk to any participants that you may have. It has to fit into what they call the categories. This chart right here says 6 exempt categories. I believe the federal government just changed this regulation, which is right here. We'll go look at their website in just a moment. I think they now have 9 categories, but you have to make sure that it has minimal risk, and if it's exempt, it still has to go through the IRB process, but it doesn't have to go through the full committee like the others. Expedited is when you have not greater than what they consider minimal risk, and minimal means that your research will not do them any more harm than they would do in their daily living. So it's nothing else that they wouldn't encounter in their daily activities. And then a full review has maybe a little more than minimal risk, and it's not covered under the different categories because you see the federal government has made all these categories to fit the types of review IRB has to perform. So a little bit of definitions so we know what we're talking about. Minimal risk, you see right there, it generally means that the probability and magnitude of physical or psychological harm anticipated in the research, those are not greater in and of themselves than the ordinarily things that are encountered in daily life or in routine medical, dental, or psychological examinations. An expedited review is defined by the federal government regulations, and it allows the IRB chairperson or one or more experienced reviewers designated by the chairperson who are on the IRB committee to evaluate and go ahead and approve certain types of research. So to qualify for expedited review, your research has to fall into one of these 9 federally defined categories. And these categories involve a collection of samples and data in a manner that's not anonymous and that involves no more than minimal risk, like we talked about. So, it could be things like analysis of voice recordings or studies involving collection of hair, saliva, or dental plaque samples, because I know some of y'all are in dental hygiene, so that's an interesting thing to note. And then we said, we also have the type that is the, what was I saying? The exempt, where it has to go through IRB, but it doesn't get the scrutiny that other research does. This is the website that I was talking about. They have these wonderful decision charts on here. Let's go look at them. This is the federal government, so it has lots of stuff on here. It does that every time I come over here. So it has all this information. It has a report that goes back to why they came up with these regulations, guidance. Decision charts are kind of interesting. Informed consent postings and IRB requirements. So it has all the rules and regulations, all the things that you need to know about this web page. But the thing I like are these decision charts that they have. Let's see if we can come over here and look at one. They're kind of crazy. So I didn't put one in the slide because they are just like over the top, but they're like a decision tree. So we'll just look at the first one real quick. It's an activity research involving human subjects. So you look at it and you start here. Is it research? Yes. Is the activity a systematic investigation designed to develop or contribute to the generalizable knowledge? Is it going to help build a body of knowledge for your discipline? If no, it's not research and you don't have to worry about it. If yes, you keep going down the decision tree. Does it involve obtaining information about living individuals? No. If you're just reviewing documents and things that were done before, then you go over here and you get more choices. Of course, there's always a but, so you come over here and it says, but other laws may apply to this if you go down the page on that. The activity does have people in it, so you go to the next question. Is it conducted or supported by HHS, which is this website right here? And this is where we get to the part about the Institute is covered by the regulations. So this is us at ODU. We are covered by the regulations, and you go through the tree. They have a tree for about every thing you want to do. If you want to see if your research is exempt, you can go to that tree and check it out. So it's kind of interesting. This is kind of an interesting website to know about, to go out there and look up things. Okay, so before I get into this slide, I want to talk a little bit about our schedule. I sent out an announcement yesterday letting everybody know that they can have up till February 22nd to turn in their draft of Chapter 1, and because we've had a lot of questions about that. In light of that, for the upcoming week, this week, you were supposed to turn in Chapter 1 if you have it ready, do the test, and also do assignment number 4. So what I have decided to do is that we will just do assignment number 4 here together on the screen, and I will take that out of your list of required things to turn in. It will not affect your grade point average one way or the other, and that'll take a little bit of stress off of you, I hope, anyway. You know, grad school is stressful enough as it is. But to conclude about the human subjects, your assignment number 10 is the assignment where you have to actually have gone to the IRB net and filled out your human subjects proposal. So that is one that's due the very last week of class. So you need to be looking into that, making sure you know what all you need to do. So this is assignment 4. If you look on Blackboard, you'll see that there is no assignment 4 available because I just made it unavailable, and I put the questions here. So the first question is, describe the purpose of a review of literature section of the research study. So in other words, what is the purpose of us making a Chapter 2 in our research proposal? What are 3 sources or places that you could use for material in your review of literature? What are 4 of the errors commonly made during a review of literature? What do people do that makes their literature review not very valid or reliable? And then how do you write a citation for a reference page, which is at the end of your research proposal for a book and for a journal using APA guidelines? So let's look at the first one. So the purposes of a review of literature are the following things, and some of them are pretty self-explanatory. If you're researching a problem, if you can find other literature that supports your research statement, then that validates the fact that what you're doing is valuable and will add to the body of literature in your discipline. It also helps you get other viewpoints and other factors that you can pull in to make your research statement and problem more encompassing and more generalizable to an entire population. It also sometimes can help you find things that you didn't know could be a variable or something that would be important. I know you stress about the Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 and Chapter 3s that we have to do in the class, and they are a big thing. I'm going to tell you, I know that they are a huge undertaking, but a lot of people start writing their Chapter 1 and they say, this is what I'm researching. This is my thing. I know it's my thing. I feel it in my heart. And then you start doing your review of literature and you start reading other things. And all of a sudden you realize there's a different slant to what I thought. So sometimes you have to go back and revise your research statement. So actually, the review of literature is probably the piece that's the most important to your whole research or your thesis or whatever, because the more research, the more current, relevant research you can find, the better you are able to develop and craft and narrow down your research focus, and it will be much more rewarding to you and more valuable in the end. So these are the purposes that you need to know for that question. Okay, let's see. Question number 2 said, 3 sources of material for a review of literature, and you see I've listed them all here. There's a lot of different things you can do. Government documents like court proceedings, indexes We have a lot of those on the ODU website at the library, and ERIC, which is Educational Research. You can go and get those things. You can read abstracts to see if that entire report would be something that you want to really explore further. So these are places where you should get your information. So what are some common errors when you're reviewing literature? The question actually says describe 4, but I put all of them out here. You know, sometimes you just get in too big of a hurry, because that happens to all of us. You rely too heavily on secondary sources. Remember, when you see something, if you see a quote in there that somebody made and you say, wow, this sounds just like what I was thinking of, find their name on the back page of that article and go find their direct article that they wrote, because it may be a gold mine of information for things that you weren't aware that were out there that go along with what you're looking for. So you need to really stick with primary resources. You know, sometimes there are things that have topics on educational matters or research subjects that you're talking about, other than just education or discipline specific journals. So, you know, don't narrow your focus. Be open to reading anything. Limiting your topic for review is probably the hardest part. If you have too broad of a topic, you know, it's just kind of like Google. If you just go to Google and say, I'm looking for a book, you're going to get a million hits. But if you're saying, I'm looking for information on genetic predisposition to type 2 diabetes, that's going to narrow down your research focus. So make sure that when you are searching, you include enough variables and enough specifics to narrow it, but don't make it so narrow that you miss something. So sometimes you have to search it narrowly, and when you realize you don't get a lot of hits, you go back and broaden it a little. But it's kind of a give and take. You have to kind of learn how to put in certain words and take out certain words to get what you want. Sometimes when you are reading an article and you write down that this is bibliographic data, but you know, the information where you got the research from, the citation, sometimes we write that down wrong, and then when you try to go back and find it, you can't find it. That's a common occurrence with things that are on the website, because sometimes the links get broken and you thought you knew where it was, but now you can't find it. Fortunately, ODU has a really great way of where you can keep a record in your folder on the library, and they have a really great system of where you can copy the citation and you can email it to yourself, or you can keep it in your folder so you don't lose too much about it. Sometimes you have way too much stuff that you copy down, so it's hard for you to get to that nugget or that point that you thought was really important from that one particular resource. I think sometimes this happens more when everything's electronic, because you keep the whole electronic version rather than, you know, like we used to do, have to read it page by page on paper, and you would highlight what you wanted. So it's important to develop a system that works for you, that you know where you can quickly access information and get it. So that was question number 3. So question number 4 says, write a citation for a reference page. Now your reference page is the last page of your proposal for a book, and then also for a journal using APA. APA just put out a new edition. I can't remember if it was August, but it was in 2019. So now it is APA 7th edition, not 6th edition. If you go to the OWL at Purdue and click on APA, that's probably the best online resource. But be cautious of using any of the citation machines that they provide out there, because they are not always accurate. I just went there before I started this presentation and typed in the name of a book I have, and I told it I wanted an APA and went to send a citation machine. It gave me a citation but I know it was wrong because it did not capitalize the first word in the subtitle after the semicolon. You know, it was like e-learning semicolon, and it didn't do it right. So you can't always rely 100%, but it's a good starting point if you just need something quick to copy the reference. At least you'll have all the data you need. You just might have to manipulate it a little bit. So for a book, the format, and this comes directly from Al at Purdue, the format is to have the author, comma, first initial, second initial, if they have one, in parentheses, year of publication, and a period. Then you italicize the title of the work, capital letter if it has a subtitle. If it's just Jones, comma, VR 2010, the Book of Job, it has no subtitle, so that's all you put. But if it's Jones, comma, VR and all of that, and the title of my book is Visual Basic, semicolon, or Visual Basic without the semicolon, maybe it just, the book says Visual Basic, Tools to Learn Programming Language Quickly, that would have a semicolon, so it'd be Visual Basic. Visual would be capitalized, basic is not, semicolon, and then tools is capitalized and the rest are not. That's the hardest thing that people have in using APA, is when to capitalize, when to not. This example right here probably is not even a good one, so I probably shouldn't have used it. Alexander the Great is his name, so that's why Great is capitalized. But if it was something else, only Alexander would be capitalized, and then only life is capitalized, and the name of the publisher. Now, if you have a journal, that's where it gets a little trickier, because journals, you know, they can be a print journal, one that you hold in your hand, or it could be an electronic copy of a journal. So the format is basically the same. Usually journal articles have more than one author. So you got author 1, author 2, author 2, 3, the year, the title. You see the title of the article is not italicized. Then the title of the journal is italicized, and you put volume number. So say it's volume 80, and then in parentheses, no space, you put the issue number, which is 3, comma, and then the pages, say 78 through 89. If it does have what's called a DOI attached to it, you would put that at the bottom. I mean, you would put that at the end of the thing. So if it's print, here's an example. Here's one the guy wrote, The Eclipse of Listening in the New Criterion, volume, issue, comma, pages. No P, no anything, just the numbers. If it's an electronic version, you see we have 2 authors, the date. Here's the title, goes to the semicolon. This is the only word that gets capitalized. You go through here, here's the journal that it was printed in, the volume, the issue, the pages, and then the DOI. This is another way to reference how to find this quickly online. If it doesn't have a DOI, then you should use the URL. So that's basically it for this week's lesson. I tried to cull it down a little bit, try to take some of the stress off, try to make it a little easier for you. So I hope that you're doing okay with the test. If it's not acting the way it should, or you think something is weird, don't hesitate to give me an email, send me a text, whatever you need to do. I'm always glad to talk to you. I'm always trying to help you figure out what's going on. I totally understand how stressful this is, and especially if this is your very first class. So just keep trying. Getting through a graduate program is 95% persistence. It's being able to just stick to it and keep plugging away. Every single person I know, well, there might be one or two smarty pants out there in the world, but most people I know all felt like they were in way over their heads when they first started their master's or their doctoral program, and we all survived and made it. So there is hope but don't give up. But just give me a call if you need anything. Thank you.